Hey, good morning, Eastern Oregon, and welcome to this June 19th version of AM Live on EOA. Your connection to Eastern Oregon, we're glad that you are here with us today. All of our content can be found at EOA.network. That's like www.eoa.network, only you don't have to type the www anymore. Anyhow, that is the place where you can find the location of our Facebook, YouTube, Roku channel, website, and then also where all of this content ends up on a podcast network. So be sure and check that out. Glad that you are here. Here in a little bit, we are going to have two ladies with us, the coordinator, the program director for all of Eastern Oregon, and the program director for Union County from CASA, Court Appointed Advocates for Children, something like that. And so they'll be here with us to clear that up. So glad that you guys are with us today. So how are you, man?
Morning. Yep, first Friday.
Right?
Yeah, it's kind of a sad day today. We have that funeral this afternoon.
That's right.
It's
yeah.
just, like, I don't do funerals for one thing. Like, I don't go to them. Mm-hmm. I'm not a big funeral person, but it's like I just don't like seeing people sad, and I think people should be celebrated when
Yeah.
I'm just my grandma when she passed away, she said, "You better not have a funeral. You better have a party." Guess what? Me and my grandpa did. We threw a party.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And so this will be the service itself will be on our network. We'll start streaming at 1:45. There'll be Johnson was a sheriff's deputy, and he died late 30s of cancer, which is like super tragic. So anyhow, he will have the honors of. There'll be people here in La Grande, officers from all over the state to help honor him. There'll be a procession through downtown and up 2nd Street, and the event itself is in the high school gymnasium. And so
there's a lot of roads closed, so if you want to see what roads are closed, I posted a map on our social media, because there's a lot of,
right.
I mean, it's a tricky little navigation up there today.
It is, yeah. The procession is going to be right before noon, so it'd be like around 11:45, and they're going to come up Island Avenue and turn right on Adams, come downtown, all the way downtown through downtown on Adams Street, and then they're going to turn left on 2nd Street and go up to the high school. So
they changed the time of the procession?
I don't know.
'Cause I mean, yesterday they were saying that there's an hour between the procession
Correct.
and the funeral.
Right, and I said at 11:45.
The funeral's at 1, right?
Correct.
Oh, okay.
Yes, yeah, right.
I thought there was an hour between the two, like the end of the, you know what I mean? So I must have just misunderstood.
So all of the honors, the procession is going to end up at the high school at around noon.
Oh, okay.
And then there's an hour wait before the service actually begins.
And you can't get in until 12:15. Make
Right.
sure people know that. If it's open to the public.
Yeah.
And 12:15 is when you can get in.
Yep. So anyhow, well, hey, you want to do sports?
Let's do it.
All right.
AM Sports Report brought to you by Hobby Habit. Welcome to Daggerheart, a new epic TTRPG from Darrington Press. Powered by an innovative card and duality dice design, Daggerheart blends tactical depth with narrative freedom, empowering each group to make the game their own. Go check it out at Hobby Habit today, 411 1st Street in La Grande, just for the fun of it. EOU Volleyball is hosting the OACA All-Star Series this Saturday up at Quinn. It's $5 to get in. It's basically high school all-stars. They're going to have 4 teams. There's going to be 2 games to start it off with a seeding, and then the winners will play each other. The losers play each other. So 4 games overall, and this helps support EOU volleyball. So get up there and check out some really good volleyball and support the volleyball team. The La Grande Legends Legion baseball team is on the road this weekend. Both teams, actually. The older team will be playing a tournament in Walla Walla, and the younger team will be headed to Baker. And then on Sunday night officially is when the Little League All-Star Tournament starts here in LeGrand, and they're looking for help. They have 42 teams playing 77 games from the 22nd through the 30th of June, and they need help with concessions. So, Benny, put that picture up real fast, please. The other picture. There you go. That picture right there is in our social media feed, and find it, and there's a link right below that picture. And that's where you can sign up to do concessions. You can sign up to do scorekeeping. You can sign up to count pitches. You can sign up to clean up the field. You can even sign up to clean the bathrooms if you want to. So, yeah, let's help them out. That's a lot of people, a lot of extra work, and they rely completely on volunteers for that. So go check it out and get signed up if you want to get involved with LeGrand Little League and just be part of what's going on in the community. Today at 5:30, the interview with two-time 4A boys basketball player of the year and two-time state champion from Baker, Isaiah Jones. He just signed with EOU men's basketball. That's going to come out today, finally. I've been working on it, and here's a little peek. I'm so glad that you were grounded enough to know that this is the right level for you, because it is.
Yeah.
And I believe that 100%.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, college is like different. You got people transferring, going up, down, staying the same. So
Yeah,
like,
who knows? In 2 years, maybe it's not.
no, I know it's true. Like you're never gonna have the same college team every year. It's different dudes, and so that's always a thing. Like our team at Eastern, I don't think is gonna be the same every year, so it'll be, I think just building like a good relationship with the team that we do have that year, and see what we can do.
It's completely different than it was 10 years ago.
Oh, I agree.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you don't got dudes that are your teammates for 4 years. Ever.
No,
I mean,
no.
It's just it's a revolving door, and every once in a while there's a 4-year guy.
That's
you
true.
never know, and you don't ever start with that label on you as, oh man, this is just because of the transfer portal, just because it's more like a job now. And there's, I hate to say it, but if you're really good at your job, the bigger companies are coming and looking for you.
Exactly.
And
That's
the
how
same
it is.
thing in basketball.
Yeah. But obviously I'm here for now, so.
Yep.
And I plan on being, maybe if something changes, but I mean, I'm all in. So.
What's your goals at EOU, part of the basketball team?
I mean, obviously to win. I don't like losing, so I'm going to just find my role. I think I can do a lot of things, so just finding my role and how I can impact winning at whatever I need to do, whether it's on D or O. But I think just both ends of the floor, just
I
making
think you
an
step
impact.
in and make an impact right away. Like, there's no reason why you can't.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I plan on, bringing the same competitiveness, even a little bit more than high school, just because I'm kind of restarting again, like, I guess not necessarily trying to prove something, but it's kind of just
fresh.
It's a new chapter. You kind of restart. So,
AM Sports Report brought to you by Hobby Habit, 411 First Street in LeGrand, just for the fun of it.
All right. Thank you, man.
Yeah.
All right. Let's take a look at outside. It's pretty this morning.
Yeah.
It was really beautiful and cool on the way to work today.
Today's going to be the last hot day for a while. I
Is
think.
it?
Well, I mean, kind of hot.
All right, let's look at that graphic. So almost 80 degrees today, 50 tonight, and then, it's cooler.
Yeah. Pulls the old Eastern Oregon switcheroo on us tomorrow.
Yeah, so then it looks like Saturday, Sunday, there's a little bit more percentage chance of rain.
Just the weekend, though, because on Monday it cranks back up.
Yeah, but not too much. I mean, the rain isn't forecast, so that's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it definitely will be cooler. So, And then I keep forgetting to mention, so EOA Live is sponsoring the 4th of July celebration, Thunder at the Peak, which is the fireworks display put on out in Union County. We'll be talking about that more, but be sure and put that on your schedule. That's an all-day event normally. You can come and hang out in Union during the day, and then in the evening People can make their way up to the golf course. It is just a beautiful location to be able to watch the fireworks, because the way they light them, it's just right there. I mean, you can sit so that you can watch where they're running around lighting the fireworks. It's a super cool thing. So
I almost ran over a rattlesnake last year.
Did you?
4th of July, yeah, when we were setting up to stream the fireworks. There was a rattlesnake laying right across the cart path on one.
Yeah. That's their habitat up there.
Yeah. I mean, they got kind of invaded on.
Yeah.
You want to know a funny Buffalo Peak story though? So when Buffalo Peak first opened up, they put out this thing, this magazine, and people have it. I mean, it was a black and white, like it went in the newspaper. And one of the county commissioners, I don't remember which one, but he's like standing on Buffalo Peak, and there's a big marijuana plant right next to him that they didn't catch it right in the. They hadn't caught it yet.
Nobody noticed.
Nobody noticed it until it come out. Yeah. I think Dana has a copy of it out at Buffalo Peak.
That's funny.
I'm pretty sure he does actually.
Yeah.
Pretty funny. And 25 years ago, marijuana wasn't legal, so it was like, it made it even funnier.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Well, hey, we will be right back with the CASA ladies, which is the court. I'll get it right here in a second. Court-appointed special advocates, and they are volunteers that help advocate for children who are having issues in their homes, or they need somebody in a court to speak up for them and their needs. So we'll be right back. All right, we're back. I'm just going to call you ladies the CASA ladies, if that's all right. Yeah, okay. Sure. And this is Jill Finney and Wendy Seimer. Jill, you and I are new acquaintances. Wendy and I have known each other for a long time. We have our kids hung out together. And so, thank you. And so explain to me, so there is a CASA for Eastern Oregon, and there's a CASA for Union County. Right, I mean, and so inside of CASA for Eastern Oregon is CASA for Union County. And Jill, you are the program manager for the Union County part, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Wendy, you are the program manager for all of Eastern Oregon.
Yeah, I'm the training and operations coordinator.
Okay, thank you.
Serving all 7 of our counties.
Okay.
So CASA of Eastern Oregon covers 7 counties.
Awesome. Okay, well, thank you. So Wendy, you've been doing this a while.
I have.
So explain to me what this is. Why is this program necessary? And kind of the core explanation of what it is. Yeah.
So it's necessary, Brent, because we have mankind, we have flesh that abuses children.
Yeah.
And so children, when they're abused or neglected, they come into state care. And when that happens, we have an advocate that we can assign to them, if there's one available. Mm-hmm. And then they advocate for that child through the court system. So CASA is mandated by law. It's a national program. It's mandated by law that every child should have an advocate when they come into state care.
And the advocate part of it is somebody who analyzes and speaks on the needs of the kid, regardless of the situation, right?
Correct. Yeah, there's 4 main components to our role. That is investigation. So we want to learn as much as we can about the case, about the child, what their needs are. And then we're going to advocate for them in the court. We're going to speak up and make recommendations to the judge that he will order or not order.
Okay.
We're going to talk to the school providers. We're going to talk to counselors. We're going to do what we can to help support that child. We're going to monitor the case to make sure that the orders are followed, that when the judge does order something, that actually occurs for the child. And then we're going to also facilitate. That's the other main component of our role. So we're going to facilitate services with the other providers. When children enter care, as you saw through the demonstration that we provided, there's a lot of people that touch their lives. And so we're going to help facilitate those services and make sure that, people know what that child needs.
Yeah.
So does the kid have to be in state
Yes,
custody to have a
do.
CASA?
Absolutely.
So what about kids, and this is kind of off, it's a little, but what about kids that don't necessarily have parents that speak up for them that are, like...
we've had lots of requests for that type of thing, like parents is divorcing.
Yeah,
so they need a kid
yeah.
And we would love to do that, but it's not part of our statute.
Okay,
There's
gotcha.
talk about expanding the service area for CASAs. It's also a volunteer role. And so we're busy recruiting, and we currently don't have enough voices for the children we have in care.
Gotcha.
So then we've all heard of Child Protective Services.
Correct.
Okay, does that come before?
Yes.
Yeah. So kind of explain to me the order of, so if you have a child who's being mistreated at home.
Sure.
Then kind of walk me through the process of what happens. Yeah.
So anybody who's aware of any abuse or neglect should be reporting to a hotline. There's
Okay.
a hotline to report to.
Okay.
The hotline does an assessment. They have a chart that they follow and some guidelines that they do an assessment and determine whether or not they should investigate a case.
Okay.
If there's enough concern, then they go out and they investigate the case. That's the CPS worker.
Okay.
Child Protective Services. They'll go out and investigate the case. They have 10 days where they can work with that family and try to develop an in-home plan to not remove the child.
Now, and CPS right now is through CHD, is that right?
DHS,
DHS,
the Department of Human Services.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah,
All
Oregon
right,
Department
okay.
of Human Services
Okay.
manages the children who come into care.
Okay.
And so that CPS worker will go out, make their assessment. If they determine that they can't leave the child in the home because it would not be safe, then they would remove the child. And then they need to find a placement for the child. They try to work with family placements, maybe a foster family. And then they would place the child. They prepare within 24 hours. They have to have a hearing with the court to take custody of that child, basically have a shelter hearing. And so then they go to the court and get a shelter hearing. The judge says, yes, there's a need for shelter. And then they take shelter. And then the CASA program is assigned at that time
Okay.
at shelter. And then Jill becomes aware of the case, and she monitors it and tracks it and attends the hearings and follows it until we have jurisdiction or she's able to assign a CASA to the case.
I'm sure it's a high percentage, but not every kid that's in state custody is abused, right? I mean,
There's some form of either neglect or abuse.
Oh, okay,
So
so it
they've
is
either
every kid.
lived in a deplorable home conditions, maybe not adequate food, not getting to school, maybe not adequate medical. There are some physical and sexual abuse cases. We have that. Honestly, probably about 90% of our cases are substance use
Yeah, of course.
disorders. We have a lot of substance use disorders, and that makes people make poor decisions.
Yep.
So.
Okay.
Kids are exposed to sex offenders and things like that.
Yep.
So, and let's go back over, because I think it's important to understand that, we often think of abuse as something egregious like sexual abuse, but
Sure.
but it can be something more nuancy. Like,
Absolutely. Yeah, there's all kinds of
Yeah,
forms.
so
I mean,
Jill, why don't you tell me about some of those things that, yeah.
Yeah, and so they go through their assessments. It can depend on age of the child. And so home conditions, safety in the home, like fire safety, those are things that they sometimes can rectify early on before a child comes into care. It can be, are they getting food? Are they being watched, supervised? We've had children come in due to that. A consistent non-supervision can be being exposed to dangerous people in the home or just chaotic lifestyle. Unstable housing can sometimes be a reason. There's a lot, and that's why that's abuse and neglect is kind of a broad term.
Right.
Yep. And sometimes those can be taken care of real quick. We do have a window from when a child comes into care before jurisdiction happens, where they work with families to try to hopefully get the children home
Yeah.
in the first 60 days of a case.
So, you know, every responsible parent's nightmare is that they're not taking care of their children. You know, I mean, and so, but at the same time, life can be fairly chaotic. You and I were talking about, earlier, because you have two boys, no, a boy and a girl.
Yep.
Sorry, yeah, that are right in the middle of sports right now,
Yep.
and they're, you know, and clearly you're working a full-time job. I mean, so there's a lot of chaos in normal life, yeah. But I think that if some of those things are, the kids are not eating consistently, they're not getting to school consistently.
Correct.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, am I measuring this right?
Yeah.
I mean,
It's if that chaos is affecting the child.
Yeah.
If your chaos, if anything that is happening in that home is affecting the safety or well-being of that child.
Okay.
There's definitely a threshold to be met
Yeah.
of a
Yeah.
level that would deem a child to come into care.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So-
And there is opportunity before they come into care to have that rectified, like doing an in-home safety plan.
Yeah.
Which could be bringing in a grandma who can live with the family until things are
Yeah.
taken care of or the parents get help or support.
So, but most of the time by the time that you guys are interacting with them, there's somebody else has already made that assessment.
Yes.
They're in the system because whatever the threshold has been, it has been met in some manner.
Correct.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. And so then what do you guys do? How do you advocate? I mean, and these ladies came and they spoke at our Rotary group. It's been a couple of weeks ago, and then I captured Jill afterwards and said, "Hey, you got to come on a morning show." But one of the things you did is you did a demonstration with me where I represented the kid, and you drew on a table like this. You had people, little tags that represented different people in their lives. You know, their teacher or their parents or their, you know, all of these different things. And then as somebody goes through, as a kid, goes through CASA and they're moved into a more stable situation, a lot of those long-term connections are broken and so like, I mean, even, so talk about what happens to a kid. Tell me the connections that are broken that people might not know.
Sure.
Yeah.
So we talk every time a child's removed from a home, it's trauma. It's traumatic for them. And they are being separated from the life they know. It's very difficult. They sometimes don't understand what danger they were even in because that's just the life they've been living. But when they get taken and placed with, they can be a relative or non-relative. Relative is usually the easiest for them to acclimate to. But they are being removed from their parents. Sometimes siblings get separated. If they don't have a placement locally, they will get placed outside the area, which can separate them from their schools, their friends, their teachers. And when you think of a home and a family, you have your culture, your traditions, the things you do for your birthday parties, Christmas traditions, all that's also lost while they're in care. And our CASAs are trained to ask children like questions about what could we do, like what do you normally do for your birthday or for Christmas, and try to advocate that those are hopefully integrated in when we get there. But there is a lot of connection loss, and children don't always stay in one placement while they're in care. They get bounced around sometimes as the case moves forward, and those continually are new connections made that are then broken every time they move. They can also not have their family pets moving with them. Their personal items don't always come, like if they have baby blankets, stuffed toy, depending on the situation, those don't always come with them either. And those are hard. They don't always get them back. We do try to get those if we can, but there's a lot of lost connection. And children are extremely resilient, but it is traumatic.
Right. And I hadn't really thought about all of that until we and clearly that was the purpose of the demonstration. So what does, But in all of that change, the CASA, the person who has advocated, that is consistent, hopefully.
Correct.
Yep. So our goal is once a CASA is assigned to a case or a child, oftentimes if a sibling group comes in, we will have a CASA advocating for the group if appropriate. But they stay with them until permanency is found, which means the court has closed out the case, whether they've gone to adoption, guardianship, back with parents. They stay there and advocate through the entire life of the case. And they are an actual legal party on the case, which means they get all the documentation that the attorneys are getting, that the caseworkers are getting, and that gives them the power to write a court report and put recommendations in. And they can object to motions and they actually have power in the court. They're one of the very few parties who can do that. But they
Request
are,
hearings.
and they are in the home every step of the way, getting to know the children. If they do have a stuffed bear that they left behind that's really special to them, we make sure that if we can, we get that for them. They know a lot of small details. When there's changes, they talk to the teachers and see how they're adjusting at school. And when there is changeover, they're the one who knows all that past history and can see if there is behavioral changes, if they're struggling, because they do know them one-on-one, and can see if there is changes, how they're doing, if there's improvement. They're a good check system that if counseling needs to be happening and that isn't happening, that they push for those services. And they are like experts on their case. They're only allowed to carry 2.
Okay.
Yep, they're only allowed to carry 2 cases so that they can maintain and be essentially experts on their case and advocate for what's best in the children's interests.
So tell me about being a CASA. These are volunteers.
Yes.
Yeah. So tell me, what are these people thinking? I mean, I know what they're thinking, but what are I don't know, just kind of talk to me about how they become qualified, how their training. You do the training, so why don't you? Yeah, talk to me about that.
Yeah,
Wendy.
so there's 20 hours of in the seat training that we do. We provide our training virtually, which started with COVID. And at first it was just like, oh gosh, I just don't know about this. It took a lot of work. And to get used to that whole virtual presence is different than in person. But it's been really beneficial because we're able to train across our 7 counties. We actually also train Klamath County as well. So we have 8 counties we can train from one spot. It helps reduce our overhead cost for that piece of it. So there's 20 hours of seat training. So we start talking about the advocate role, what that looks like. We talk about child interviews, relationships, what that could look like. We talk about substance use. We talk about mental health. We talk about resilience. We just covered different areas, that domestic violence, just things that our children are exposed to, so that our volunteers have a basis of knowledge so that they know when there's a need for assessment or other intervention. So we provide that training. They're also required to do courtroom observations, where they actually go in and observe hearings that are occurring for child dependency so that they know what that looks like. And then they go through that process. And then they're actually sworn, and they also visit the DHS office. There's a visitation room at ODHS. That's one of those rooms that has a family room on each side. There's an office in the middle that's got the mirrors where they can't see into it, but you can see out. Volunteers go in there and observe parent-child visits to see how those are going and how the parents are doing. So once they have that all done, then they actually go to the judge, and the judge swears them in. So like Jill had mentioned, they become a legal party to the case and arm of the court. And their purpose is to provide the judge with the information that he needs to make the best decision for that child.
Wow.
So it's a lengthy training. It's in depth, but it's the most time you'll spend. Once you have that initial 30 hours under you, we require you to have 12 hours annually of continuing ed, which we provide in various different ways. Jill has quarterly volunteer meetings where she gathers everybody together. That counts towards those hours and things like that.
In such a small area, is there a law, and how do you make sure there's no conflict of interest? Because everybody knows everybody here.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And
How do we get there?
When a case is assigned, And it's a good topic to bring up because we have crossover a lot of times, you know, because I'm staff, I'm a paid position, I'm also a volunteer advocate. I have to keep those roles completely separate from each other. We also have some people who are resource parents who serve as a foster parent to a child, you know, and as also an advocate. So we cover all of that very carefully. Yes, we're in a small rural area. Everybody knows everybody typically. As a volunteer, we are held to confidentiality. We're not able to talk about our case with anybody. My husband doesn't know the kids I serve. You know, my family doesn't know who I serve. They don't know the children. We are able to drive ourselves to go visit them so that we're going alone to the visit. So you maintain confidentiality. Jill, when she gets ready to assign a case, she would talk about some basic information about the case, maybe share a name. And if the volunteer knows that person, she would say, in what capacity do you know them?
Right.
You know, I know you. I know who you are.
Yeah.
But I don't think it would be a conflict. I don't know you enough that it would weigh or change my
Who
opinion
decides that,
on
though?
things.
Who-
Jill would. The
Okay,
program
okay.
manager would make that decision based on having conversation with that person. I've had an advocate say, you know, Wendy, I'm just not comfortable advocating for that family because, you know, I'm right next door to them. I just
Yeah.
don't want to do that. You
Well,
know,
of
we're
course.
like, okay, so we don't do that.
Yep.
Even though they may not know them enough for it to be a conflict, we want to protect our advocates as well as the families. And so we just keep that very clear and a clean line there.
Yeah.
And so one of the things too, you know, I mean, we are in a small community. I've gone to Hog Wild Days and I've had a kid run up to me, my CASA,
Yeah.
you know, and that's okay. You know, give them a hug, hello, you know. But I'm not going to go and say, hey, there's my kid I advocate for.
Right.
You're never going to point it out yourself. You know, we're going to acknowledge that the kid comes to you. I mean, some kids are happy to see you. I still
Right.
see a little girl now that she's, gosh, I think she's 14, and I advocated for her when she was 2. And I still see her and her grandma. You know, and stuff like that. I mean, that happens. We're in a small rural community. It's just whether or not your connection to them is going to change your opinion. So I've advocated for, I've advocated for a child who my son, he was like another son to me. It was his son. And he got sideways with substance use. And I said, you know, I want to take that case. I'm going to hold him to a higher standard, you know, because I know this. And it did not interfere with my ability to advocate for that child. And that's what's important. You have to maintain that advocacy for that child. That's your job. We're not
Yeah.
there to support the parents. We're there to advocate for the child. We do provide support to our parents because if they're successful, then our kids are going to be healthy. You know?
100%.
Yep. Yeah, every case, initially, the plan is reunification. The plan is for the child to go back to parent. We are cheerleaders for the parents. We do want to see them do
Absolutely.
well. We do want to see the children go home. And we try to support as much as we can. As far as conflict of interest, I usually chat with my CASAs if they bring up I know so-and-so, we go through. And the threshold is, do they have a bias? Is there a bias on the case? Because they need to come into a case on bias. So that's where that threshold is of if they are going to be on there or not.
Right, yeah, so if you were a CASA and you were aware of a family that maybe was having some troubles, and you formed a negative bias, you judged them ahead of time just based upon, I mean, and everybody does that whether we like it or not.
Sure.
Then that bias could potentially it would
Impact
affect
your
whether you
ability.
could be neutral in the situation.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep, so we do.
Well, but when you say neutral, you mean like neutral, like in the sense that, like neutral for like not giving favor to one or the other, but you should always give favor to the kid, right?
The child is our prime focus.
We investigate and make our recommendations based on fact.
Yep.
Not opinion.
Not opinion.
Or feeling.
Okay, yeah.
And so you want to be able to gather those facts. You know, yes, this parent uses substance. You know, you want to use those facts, not that I don't like how that parent behaves. You know what I
Right.
mean? You have to use facts. You can't use opinion. You know, there's times where, you know, sometimes you get that gut feeling about something. And I've said that to the judge before, Your Honor, I don't feel comfortable with this and I'm still gathering information and I can't give you exact reasons why yet. You know, but there might be something you're feeling and you're still fleshing out with information.
Right.
But everything we do is based on fact. It has to be based on fact.
Yeah, because
you
that's how the court is.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, you develop, and I say that to our CASAs when I'm training. You know, the judge can only make his decision based on the information put before him. And it's our job to put good information before him to make that decision. I've been in a hearing before where the judge has almost chastised the AAG or DHS or an attorney because he's like, come on, guys. You could have given me some more information here to make this decision. And they're kind of feeling like they're not making a good decision. And honestly, that's where CASA came about.
Right.
CASA came about from a judge in our neighboring state, Washington, in the 70s, because he was deciding whether kids should be removed from home or not. He knew nothing about them. Nothing about them. It was just a piece of paper coming across his bench.
Yeah.
And he went to his clerk and said, hey, can you go get some of your friends or some people we know and see if they'd be willing to come in and meet with these kids and provide me some more information? And that's how it started, basically. And now it's a national mandate.
So once the CASA is appointed, they don't like go investigate, do they? They're not like a private investigator.
So that's a good question, a good point, and I have to make it very clear to the volunteers when we're training, we are not doing forensic interviews.
Right, that's yeah.
A forensic interview is conducted by our
CSI
local child
LeGrand.
abuse center. They do that. They have professionals that actually interview the children, examine them, things like that. We're not doing that.
Right.
We're saying, hey, what do you like to do? What's your favorite thing to eat? What do you like in school? What are you missing? Who do you want to stay in contact with? We're doing that. What do you need? Do you have what you need? How's your medication going? You know, those are the things that we're doing. And you do it just as basic. I mean, I advocate right now, I'm advocating for a baby, and I'm also advocating for a teen that's just about ready to age out, who's been in temp lodging. That's a whole nother thing. We don't have enough homes for kids, so he's been in and out of motels, which has made my job even more important, because I'm his voice and I'm there with him, continuing with him through the system as he's moving, you know, through different people. And so you just spend time with them. You know, with babies, I just go and visit with them. With little kids, I take fun things to do, coloring books and things to play. You sit down side by side with them and start playing, and you would be amazed at what children will tell you.
Yep.
You know, and they just start talking, you know, and you come back and you show up. We're required to visit with our children once monthly. However, I always say with the younger kids, it's more important to go more often in the beginning till they build that relationship with you and know who you are, you know, and then they can call on you when they need you. You know, like I said, I have my teen, and he has my number. He texts me and he calls me. You know, there's been 2 or 3 times where I've had to talk him off the ledge because he's wanting to run, you know, because he's not happy with the way things are going. So there's just different roles like that. So you build that relationship. It's all about trust, showing up, doing what you say you're going to do, not making promises for things that you can't come through for.
It seems like when you talk about the, you know, like not being an investigator,
Yeah.
that's a serious issue that you have to really worry about, right? Because I mean, people do, you know, they automatically think that when, you know, like I don't know what the term would be, but you know, like you give somebody this responsibility, and then they think that they're gonna, you know, change the world.
Sure, yeah. So part of our training is that we're not there to rescue, we're not there to save. That's not our role to do that.
You're there to speak for the child.
Absolutely. We're there to lend our voice to that child, and we're going to do it based on their needs. So that's one of the things we advocate on a best interest principle, which is a safe, permanent home as quickly as possible. That's our role. That's what we do. Part of the training process, it's a serious training process. It's a lot of responsibility. And like you said, people can go sideways with it. We've had to remove volunteers because they go outside their parameters. They just don't get it, you know, and they get outside their parameters. We try to avoid that because we don't want anything detrimental to children.
Yeah.
So we have a pretty lengthy process. So there's a pre-interview.
Like a screening
You
process.
apply. There's a pre-interview. We go through questions. We ask you about your childhood. What was it like? What was your mom like? What was your dad like? Who was in your home? What was your family? We want to know all these things because working with children in trauma can cause re-traumatization for people who've been through their own trauma. So there's a lot to it. It's not just, you know, picking somebody off the street, giving them some training and putting them with a kid. There's a lot to it. We do background checks. We do child welfare checks. We want to make sure it's a good fit. And so once you apply, that doesn't mean you're going to be an advocate. You go through that whole hours of training with me. And through that whole training process, I'm assessing. I'm assessing your questions, your answers, what you're saying, what you're doing. We had one gal that we trained that was a forensic interviewer for another job. She did like I think insurance investigations or something, where she had to ask those kind of in-depth question things. Oh, a professional witness or something she was. And I had to say, no, this is nothing like that. This is nothing like that. You're not going to ask the child about their abuse. You're not going to ask them about any of those questions. We specifically have in our volunteer manuals that you do not ask those questions. If a child tells you in a conversation, tells you of any kind of thing they've suffered or any kind of abuse, we are mandatory reporters, so we're required to report that if it's something of concern. But other than that, we do not get into those conversations with children. We let them talk and we'll listen, and then if there's anything concerning to share, we will.
But you don't ever instigate
We
it.
never ask those questions. That's re-traumatizing to those kids.
Yeah,
And there's a
kids-
few different things you have to think about, From a kid's perspective, like Jill had mentioned, that's their life, and they don't know any different than that. Children love their parents, regardless of how they treat them. Children who are abused every day, beaten every day, love their parents.
Right.
And they know no different than that. And so we want to come in and champion for their parents, and what is it, to make them healthy as a unit. And the same thing with parents. I think when kids come into care, parents become paralyzed. They've taken my kids and now what do I do? They don't know where their line of parenting is. It's completely changed, and so they quit going to school functions and things because they don't understand that they can still be that parent and do those things. You just can't be off alone without your child, with your child alone and supervised until we're able to make sure that you can be healthy with them. And so it's hard for parents. I can't even imagine, even being a grandparent, I think about that. Could you imagine, Brent, if somebody said you can't see your grandkids without asking my permission now?
No.
That happens. That happens with kids who come into care. If my grandson came into care, I couldn't just go get him and take him to Walla Walla to play if I wanted to. I'd have to get permission from DHS to take him.
Right, even though it
it's
had
just a
nothing to
whole
do with you,
different
right?
Absolutely,
Yeah, right.
absolutely. I'm not a legal party to the
Right.
case. And so I can't have that access to him like I normally do. And so it's very odd. It's a very odd situation for families. And trying to champion that and making sure that they're getting those contacts, so that if they're having regular contact with an aunt or a grandparent, that's still happening, that they can still have that contact,
No, that's super interesting, and I don't know that I'd really understood that your attention is on the kid.
Absolutely.
Period. And and what they need in order to be healthy in some manner. And the bias, sometimes so let's say it is you can't be biased against a parent, which would be easy to do because they're an asshole. They're
Or they're acting like.
or that right
Sure,
or
yeah.
right or they're
Sure.
or the same way as or let's say so if somebody has a drug issue, a parent has a drug issue, and they're a real jerk from time to time, or your heart just goes out for them because you're sympathetic, because neither one of those really matter. They still have a drug issue that is affecting the care of their kid.
Sure.
That's
and that's what
the
we
fact.
focus on, Brett.
Right, that's the
what
fact.
we focus
Right,
on.
right.
Is the drug, substance use, and what are you doing to make that better?
Right. And so then as you're advocating, you might have those. You still have to. You just have to separate those things from yourself. So
it's not about me.
Right. And it's not
the
about
child.
your assessment
Absolutely.
or judgment of.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And I think when you become an advocate too, you take away that judgmental lens. I think we have what we call a resource lens that we look through. Okay. There's a deficit lens and a resource lens, and we do this in training. We train our advocates to look through that resource lens, because you're going to get a lot further.
Okay, so
that.
this is really good. Explain this again. So
So
the
if I'm-
deficit lens is what's wrong.
The
or what-
deficit. So this is a good example.
Okay,
So I
okay.
throw up a picture of a house that
Okay.
looks like it's in chaos. Okay. There's
right.
a cat litter box. There's food on the counters. There's dishes. There's baskets of laundry. There's stuff going on, and it's an older picture from the 70s that I've continued to use. So mom is smoking on the couch. Okay.
Right.
So this is all going on. The little boy's on the floor playing. There's some marbles there. There's a
Pretty
plate on
normal
the
to me.
table. What was that?
That's pretty normal to me.
So, okay. And there's a plate on the table of food, this kind of thing. There's a steaming cup on the table. There's a book on a chair at the table. I should have brought that picture for you to see. So anyway, I just show this picture, and I tell people, tell me what you see. Oh my gosh, that's chaos. That house is filthy. That's chaos. Da, 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 da. And that's what people's initial reaction is, okay? I go back and I say, well, I see food on the counter, so they're eating. They've got food. And if you look, I see some vegetables and some meat and some fruit. So it looks like they're getting a pretty nutritional meal. There is a humidifier in the room, so that tells me that the parents must provide care if somebody's stuffed up or sick. I see a bottle of medicine and a spoon on the counter, so somebody's getting medicine if they need it. Dad's coming through the door and the little boy's greeting him. The little boy's excited to see Dad. Dad's working. He's coming in with a lunch bag. He's working. Lots of positives. That's looking through a resource lens. What am I seeing?
Interesting.
Here? I don't see that chaos. I see that they're providing for this family. You know, and we have to consider that. People live differently. You know, how I keep my house is not how Jill keeps her house, is not how you keep your house.
Right.
You know, we all live differently, and we have to take that into consideration. A messy house is not neglect or abuse. It may not be.
Unless it's to the
Can
extreme.
the child get to some animal feces? Are they eating animal feces and that type of thing? Yes, then we have a concern. You know, it just depends. And like Jill mentioned, it's age and development. You know, if you've got a baby crawling around on the floor, we have more concern for garbage and animal feces on the floor than we do if we have a 12-year-old walking through the house. So they consider all of those things.
Seems like a lot of common sense goes into it too. I mean, like when it
If
comes
people
to,
have that.
Yeah. I didn't say that. I didn't say they
But
necessarily
that's why
have
we
it.
train.
but,
I mean, that's
yeah.
why we train. You know, just like you said, Brent, we all have biases. We all do. It's natural to have a bias. It's recognizing that you have a bias and not letting it interfere with your ability.
Yeah.
Which is
Recommendations.
why I couldn't be a CASA. Because I just can't. I've always told myself that. Like, same reason why I couldn't be like a CPS investigator or a cop, because I just can't.
Yeah.
It's-
I think it just depends on, you know, it's so funny because most of our volunteers, or not most of them, I guess a lot of volunteers, I think when I'm talking to them, we're drawn to this work because of our own childhoods, of
Yeah.
what we've experienced ourselves. I experienced some different things in my childhood that brought me to wanting to serve other children. And at first, when I first started, I've been doing this about 13, 14 years now. When I first started, I wouldn't take certain cases because I was biased, and I knew it, you know, and I just couldn't do it. Now I can. I've learned. I've grown a lot. I'm a Christian, you know. I believe in male and female marriages, you know, and I don't have a problem now if I have to advocate for a child who's transgender or that. It's not my belief.
Right.
But I'm looking at a kid who needs a voice.
That's
And
right.
that's how I look at it.
That's all-
you know, it's a
that's-
kid
that's
who
all
needs
it
a
is.
voice. It's not my opinion, and it's not me to form who that child is. It's to make sure their voice is heard.
That's good.
Good stuff. Yeah. So each of you give me, Jill, you first.
Okay.
Give me, you know, clearly without using names or whatever, but give me a scenario that was successful.
Oh, a successful
Yeah.
scenario.
So yeah, so that you know, yeah. Just tell me a story about somebody who's been advocated for and how they came out the other end.
Yeah, so we had a couple kids come in. They were little. I would say they were both under 4. And it was due to domestic violence in the home, chaotic home life, like super cluttered, unsafe, couldn't get out of a home in a fire situation.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and that's fairly common. The houses can be pretty cluttered, and that, you know, exits are blocked due to dressers and just clutter and such. Anyway, so children came in, and mom immediately was very receptive to support. And she had substance abuse as well. Both parties did. Anyway, she went through the work, had DHS help. We had a CASA assigned to both children and was supporting parents as they would let the CASA. They aren't always receptive, but mom was. And just throughout the case, supported her. She became pretty compliant, wanting to change her life around through the process, she went to treatment, and during treatment counseling, realizing how unhealthy the relationship was, and it's gotten her children back. She ended up in a treatment center that allowed the children to join her in a sober living situation, and she got to have supports while learning to parent her children again after not having them for about a year, and they're doing really well.
That's awesome.
And the CASA stayed with them, and the relationships, they've separated and are going their own and have gone their own ways, and it's turning out really well. She's kind of restarting her life with her 2 kids, and the CASA is still very much involved and gives me updates on how they're doing.
So at what point in a case like that is CASA no longer involved? I mean, where it's like, okay, yeah.
So once the case closes, that's DHS usually pushes that we're going to dismiss the case. They put an order through, and CASAs are able to object, saying, no, I don't agree with this, or they say yes, and it'll go through and the court will close it. And then this one is reunification, because now a parent has custody and is in a place where even if another parent is unsafe, they're able to keep their children safe in that situation. They're getting custody of their children, and DHS is comfortable, the state's comfortable that they're going to be able to keep them safe in those situations. And then the judge signs it and closes it out, and at that point, the CASA program is also dismissed from the case. But the CASA can stay involved as much as they want, as much as the family's okay with. Like Wendy said, she has seen kids. We have a lot that know them well into adulthood and beyond, and stay like a family friend, mentor, whatever that role looks like. But as far as the CASA program, we come off as soon as the case is closed through the courts.
All right. So Wendy, tell me a story.
Let's say I advocated for a little gal. There were 2 sisters that were together at the time. One was younger. I think she was about 3, and this little gal was 9 when I got with her. It was a situation where they ended up being separated, different dads. One dad was, whichever parent can be successful first receives the child. So we had a dad and mom, and he was the dad to the youngest. And the children came into care. He was able to be successful, so the youngest child went to him. Another piece of that I just want to mention that we hadn't talked about yet, that's something to think about, is when we have situations like that, we have older children, not even older, it could be a 5-year-old over a 2-year-old. Often our children become parentified, where they are actually providing the parentification for that child. They're making sure they're being fed. Are you familiar with that?
I've been there and done that.
That's right. Familiar with that. Yep. So they're actually providing care for that younger child. And then when they're separated, there's a horrible, that child loses that. It's like, have you had that empty nest thing? It's kind of like that, where the child's like, oh my gosh, where's my baby that I'm supposed to be caring for? The baby's been taken from them, or the child's been taken from them, and they don't know how to be a kid. They don't know what their role is now. That can be challenging, working with foster families, because a foster parent needs to take over that role of caring for the child. So anyway, so the children were separated. The little girl went to her dad, and the youth I was advocating for stayed in care. She was in a couple different foster homes, but she was in a foster home, the same one, for a good amount of time, which was awesome. I loved that family. And so she was doing pretty well there, but had some challenges. She was 9, like I said, when she came into care. She had seen some things that formed her character. She was a little promiscuous, didn't know about, modesty and keeping yourself healthy, things like that. So we had to work through some of those things together. But anyway, she ended up being, mom was not able to be successful. She wasn't able to have her ever return to her. She was in care about 12, till she was about 12. And then she was an actual outside adoption. We did not have a family member who would be a guardian or adopt her. And so typically that's what happens when we have adoptions or guardianships. Absolutely. They're familiar. She did not have anybody. She had a grandma a maternal grandma who was going to be her guardian, and then her world fell apart. She ended up divorcing and moving, and all that changed, and she already had care of one of her other grandchildren. So that didn't work out. So we started searching in the state for somebody. Found somebody in the state of Oregon who didn't have kids, couldn't have kids, wanted to have a kid. And actually, I was involved in that whole process. I was able to be on the screening committee and all that, weigh in, and all that, talk to them. Found them, met them. They came here, met her one day. We met up at Bernie Park. I just remember the day. And she got with that family. They came for a weekend after that and stayed, and she got to spend time with them to decide, is this going to be a good fit, and are you comfortable going with me?
And how old is she at this point?
She was 12 at that time. And so had to get through all of that pieces, Actually, she wasn't 12 by then. Gosh, I think I'm off on ages. I think she was more like 7 when she came into care, so she was probably 9 or 10 by this point. And so she ended up meeting them, and she was nervous, but she was excited too. She wanted, a family, really wanted a family. And we talked about that. What do you want your family to look like, So anyway, they ended up adopting her. And it's kind of ironic because she looks a lot like the mom. It was really kind of funny because I kept saying, oh my gosh, she looks so much like you. It's just funny. It's just, I think it's really a God thing. But anyway, she was adopted. She moved to across the state, like to Southern Oregon, far away from me, it broke my heart. I missed her so much at first, but that's part of it, just being so excited for them, and championing for them and their life and stuff. So I've stayed in contact with those with the adoptive parents. There were times where they'd call me, 3-4 months in, and oh my gosh, we've got some family problems, relationships. What's this look like? What should we do? And asking me for support because I knew her. I knew the family, and they didn't, I knew how, what the family was like, and, recommended that they not have contact with mom, let her adjust to this new family, until that contact can be healthy and she's older and can understand because mom's still not in a good place, today. And so, so it's been really exciting for her. It's my happy story. I just am so excited for her that she was adopted and she's got a family, and oh my gosh, I've had so many fun adventures together, and she's in her teens now, and she's done FFA, and she's just done so many things that she would not have opportunity to do. And she's just grown into this beautiful young woman, and I'm just so excited for her.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So talk to me real quick about funding. So I don't know.
Yes.
Just kind of lay it out for me. Yeah.
So our program, we're one of those mandated, non-funded programs. Okay. So we're going to say every child deserves to have an advocate. We're not going to pay you to do it.
Okay.
Okay. So we're based on volunteers. I mean, our crew that supports our children are volunteers. Of course, it costs money to manage volunteers, to train them, and to support the children we have in care. So currently we have had a reduction of $180,000 in our budget between the biennium, the current year we're ending. We're on a fiscal year, so we're going to start in the year July, and next year. So we lost $80,000 in this current year and $100,000 for next year. We're thinking it's probably around $10,000-15,000 for our local program. We do serve 7 counties. And so with that loss, those funds help pay for Jill's position to supervise the volunteers, to man the cases. For every child that doesn't have a volunteer, Jill monitors the case. She attends the hearing. She stays up on it so that if we do get a volunteer, she can assign them and know what's going on with the case, where it's at. So it pays for that time, pays for, the training of the volunteers. And like I said, we try to send all of our money directly to children. We're providing a lot of items for children when they come into care, different things like that. We also look for support for that. We have different donors. Horizon Credit Union has done different sock and diaper drives for us, which we love because we go through a lot of diapers. A lot of diapers.
We do go through a lot of diapers.
And so just stuff like that. So, it's been a hard hit. I've been with the program for a lot of years, and, I came from an education world where you always fight for funding too. There's just no funds to work in. And so when I first started with CASA, we do everything very thriftily. Anything we can get donated, borrowed, we just do all we can to not spend money. And then, through the years, we actually, like last year, we had a pretty good fiscal year. There started to be some state funding that came through for the program and that. Well, with the federal cuts that have occurred, it's cut some of the state funding as well. And so that's where we've been hit. We've got a couple House bills out there right now. One of them I heard has passed, which will do some help backfill some of that state funding. There used to also be funds available for CASA programs that were called VOCA funds, and that's Victims of Crime Acts, or Crimes and Abuse, I think, maybe Victim of Crime and Abuse, I think. And so those are funds that were available for anybody who had been a victim to a crime or abuse, which would be physical abuse, sexual abuse, those type of things. And those used to help support some of the programs. Those funds also went away. The VOCA funding, and so that's part of that, trying to find ways to backfill some of those funds that are lost. We cover, like I said, the 7 counties. If you look at the rural geography of what we cover, it's a lot. I mean, we're going, we're down in Lakeview. We're at the border of California. It's one of our counties. I mean, we're clear down across the state in a lot of rural areas. So for just, myself and our director to get to our different programs, can take a lot of time. But we have a program manager in each county and have them man it. And we just try to really keep to the bare minimum of what we need to survive. We have a director and myself that manage all of our operations for the agency. And then we have a program manager, like I said, in each county, and a couple other. Malheur County is one of our higher counties for children. We have a high population of kids in Malheur County, so we have a couple staff down there.
And it sounds like that if you don't have a CASA, if you don't have enough CASAs, then ultimately that's on you.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm unable to advocate for the children because I'm not in the home actually visiting.
Yeah.
So when court comes around, I cannot give a recommendation, because I am not the CASA. I am just monitoring those cases. I'm keeping up, kind of seeing the status of them. And if I do have a CASA available, I'm able to prioritize which case could really use a CASA or do a good match, because I get to know my CASAs as well. I know their experience. I'll say, hey, you would do really well on this case, and I will try to get it handed off into the correct hands. But when we have a wait list, which we do, we have about 12 children in Union County right now with no CASA. They do not have a voice in court unless they show up themselves and talk to the judge. Our CASAs are trained to be a voice for the child. Whether our recommendation aligns with that voice isn't always how it is. Little kids say, I want to go home. I want to go home to mom. Of course. And we put that. It is really important that the judge is hearing what these children want and their wishes. And then based on facts, the CASAs will give a recommendation of why maybe that's not the best thing at this moment. But they are a voice, and I cannot give that as the program manager when I am just monitoring. And we have other counties that have a lot of children on their waiting lists that still need a lot of CASAs. I think our entire program, I think we're sitting around 280 children in care, and I want to say well over 100 do not have CASAs.
Absolutely.
So how many kids in Union County are in care? Is that what you?
So we have in Union we have 49 children,
which is high.
Yep,
that's high.
It's decently high.
And 12 without.
And
so
12 without.
25%.
Yep, 12, and that is because we have that cap, that 2-case cap. Cases last on average a year and a half to 2 years. They can go even longer than that. In a CASA, if they've got a caseload of 2 cases, I can't give them new cases. So we're just sitting there waiting for cases.
So that means we have roughly 18 CASAs.
We have 17.
17.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah, and not all CASAs will take 2. They're volunteers. Some of them have very busy lives. Yeah. Some only want to focus on 1 case. That is their preference, and I accept that. I don't over push and overwork my volunteers.
You're not tell them, no, you can only have
the whole point of having them on there is that they are getting to doing the work, able to keep up on it, and overwhelming a volunteer is not helpful.
No.
So that also keeps the numbers lower when you're thinking of people to cases. We do have some, or people need a break. They'll have a case end and they're like, hey, like I need to take a breather, and so they'll go kind of inactive for a little bit, and I'll say, let me know. But
managing volunteers is really hard because you don't have that leverage of like,
Pay.
I'm not going to pay you.
Yeah.
You don't do what I tell you to.
oh, and
No, and a lot of people don't get that.
It's a big role. I mean, it really is. And, you know, we've had people, I mean, I've had people start training and they're like, oh gosh, this is just more than I want to do as a volunteer. You know, I thought volunteer, I was going to go down and serve some water and call it good, you know.
Right.
And it's like, no, it's a lot of work, you know, and we make sure. That's why through that pre-training, the whole interview and process of seeing if they'd be a good fit is so important, you know, and you know, it's not quantity, it's quality that we need. You know, and I've said that you need the quantity too, you know, but quality is more important, you know, and we don't just want to recruit bodies to have the bodies. We got to have people that can actually advocate for these children. And, you know, it is hard. I've tried to take a break. I've taken I told Jill I'm going to take a break. That last case, I had a case of 4 kids that was a sex abuse case. It was just so much. And it's like, I just need a break. And I think I was off for a month maybe. I don't know if even that. Because I see the cases and it's like, oh my gosh, this kid needs a kid. And so I jump back in. You know, it's like I can't not, you know. So I've had 2 cases most of my last 13, 14 years I've advocated. You know, and I try to go back and think about all the kids I've advocated for, and it's like, gosh, you forget some of them. You know, some were short stints, you know.
Yeah. So if somebody wants more information, where do they go? If they want to be how do they reach out to you?
They can go to our website,
Okay.
CASAEO.org.
Okay.
That's a great place to go look. There's an application on there. There's information about the program, who we are. They can, you know, local people can reach out to Jill.
Okay.
She's at union at CASAEO.org.
Okay.
It's her.
CEO.
Yeah, at CASAEO.org.
And then if people want to donate,
Yeah.
can they do that?
Absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah,
That's
we've
on
got
our
lots of
website as
ways.
well.
Yep.
Yeah.
They can use Venmo. They can send us a direct check payment. We
Okay.
have sponsorship forms. We have all different kinds of ways people can donate.
Okay.
And we're nonprofit, so we can provide that for a tax write-off. You know, it's one of the things that, like I said, most of our stuff we do based a lot on donations. You know,
Right.
I had a little baby girl that was in care and she was outgrowing her clothes, you know, and so I just put a little post on my own personal Facebook, hey, we got a baby girl in care who needs some clothes, and I got $200 in Venmo to help support her, you know, so people want to give for kids and things that they need, you know. I think it's a huge need, and it's just, it's disheartening that there's no funding to support it, because when you think about the trajectory and the benefits, the outcome for a child with a CASA versus one without, it's just astounding, you know. And so it's like, you think it's, again, that early investment. You know, you've heard about that, and we're going to invest in the early years. We're going to have better success with kids later. It's kind of that same thing. We're able to build that relationship with them. And one of the things that our CASAs do, I say we're not service providers, because we're not. We're not a service provider. We make recommendations and we refer and connect people. We're connectors. But we help build resilience in kids. We might help make that one connection that
Right.
they have through the rest of their life. You know.
Yeah. Good. And then you have a fair coming up, right?
Carnival.
A carnival,
Yep.
excuse me. Okay,
Yes.
yeah. So, Bennett, put that up and tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's our annual CASA Carnival. It's our biggest fundraiser for Union County.
Okay.
It is really fun. We have horse rides. We've got a bunch of little booths. We have face painting. There's popcorn. We have Island City Deli truck comes in and does food for us. And Nerf gun fights, big raffles. It's really, really fun over at Riverside Park. And it's August 16th this year from 11 to 3.
Okay.
And it's a good community event, awareness, and also brings in some money for the program.
Cool. All right. Well, let us know. Remind us when it gets closer to that
Yep.
event, and we'd be happy to do a post for you on our social media and
Sure, yeah.
or mention that on the morning show
Yeah.
again. So
Yeah.
thank
It's a
you.
good time for kids.
thank you so much for coming this morning and
Thanks for
helping us
having
be
us.
more aware. Yeah.
Yeah.
What an awesome investment both of you are making. You know, and the cool thing about people's investment money-wise is it's right here.
Absolutely.
I mean, that is so meaningful.
You're
I mean,
helping the kids in
when
our
you're
community.
donating to something that's then you're not really sure. I mean,
Sure. Yep.
what can be more satisfying and instant
Yeah.
than I have a toddler who needs clothes
Absolutely.
and somebody is. I mean, it's
Absolutely.
like,
Yeah.
Yep.
Help put somebody through something positive.
that's
Yeah,
right,
Yep.
and
provide for.
Yep.
we're taking care of our own, which
Absolutely.
we absolutely should. Doesn't mean we
Absolutely.
shouldn't take care of everybody else, but
Absolutely.
but still, that
There's needs
I mean,
right
our
here.
first priority
Yep.
is right here. Yeah.
Yep.
So
Link is in the comments.
good. All right, man. You want to get us out of
Let's
here?
do it. On this day, June 19th, 1464, first postal service ever.
1464.
Yeah, in France. King Louis the 11th. 1846, the first officially recognized baseball game. Played by Cartwright rules, the New York Nines defeat the Knickerbockers 23-1 in Hoboken, New Jersey. 1865, Union General Gordon Granger declares slaves are free in Texas. Now the end of slavery is celebrated across the U.S. as Juneteenth. 1909, first baseball game played under lights, an exhibition between the local Elks Lodge teams in Cincinnati, Ohio. 1963, Valentina Tereshkova is the first woman in space. Well, that day she came back to Earth, so she was the first to return from space as well. 1973, on this day, the Rocky Horror Picture Show, the stage production opens in London, and it was written by Richard O'Brien, starring Jim Sharman and Tim Curry. 2024, Russia's Vladimir Putin and North Korea's Kim Jong-un sign a pact to provide mutual assistance in case of aggression in Pyeongchang, bringing the countries the closest since the Cold War. What that means is they're going to support each other if there's a war, basically. 2024, the world's oldest wine, a white revealed inside a 1st century Roman funeral urn, mixed with a man's ashes in a mausoleum in Carmona, Spain. The 1st century, what year would that be? Like 0 through 99, right?
All right. Yeah.
Wow. On this day, the #1 movie in the country in 1975, Jaws.
Yeah.
And then the quote of the day comes from Reba. To succeed in life, you need 3 things: a wishbone, a backbone, and a funny bone. I think I've done this one before, but I like it. To succeed in life, you need 3 things: a wishbone, a backbone, and a funny bone.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Jill and Wendy. Really appreciate you guys. being
Live
with us.
stream starts at 12:15 today for Deputy Dan Johnson's
At
funeral.
12:45.
Or 12:45.
Yeah. So
12:45.
Yeah, and if you wanna be a part of appreciating the procession as they come through downtown, that'll be I think it's a little before noon. So it's like noon, 11:45.
You'll hear it,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah,
I mean,
so-
there's going to be a lot of cop cars.
Yeah,
So.
so, alrighty. Hey, thank you all. We'll see you soon.